Hey guys, what is up? It is Bibsy7 here again, and welcome to my first PvM Mechanics guide. PvM and Monster guides were the #1 top voted video you guys wanted to see based on my recent poll, so I'm starting up the series here. This is a new style of PvM guide that I want to try out and get feedback on to see if it is something you guys would be interested in seeing going forward with all the other bosses in the game. And this guide is going to be for the Giant Mole, which is one of the easiest and lowest leveled bosses in the game. I wanted to use this guide as a sort of prototype of the style I would be aiming for with these guides, as it still has several different mechanics to break down. Essentially, the goal of these guides will be to break down the mechanics of the fight and how to deal with them, and then the flow of the fight overall. The goal is to provide a succinct guide that gives you all the information you need to take on the boss yourself without being too overly long or having just too much information inside the guide itself. I'd like to have sort of companion videos to this PvM guide series that have general gear setups within them, as well as niche items and inventories that you could use for general purposes across most bosses, and sort of reference those within these videos instead of going into too much detail on specific gear setups for every boss, unless there are certain necessary items that you need or a certain style that you must use. But yeah, these would just focus on the mechanics and how to fight the boss. And as this is my first attempt at a style like this, please leave feedback in the comments on what you liked, didn't like, or any ideas you have to improve this format, and also recommend what bosses you'd like to see next. I kind of am having a feeling that I'd like to do every single boss in the game in like difficulty order almost, but that's not for sure yet. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on the guide here. So the Giant Mole is one of the easiest and lowest level bosses in the game, as I said, but it still has quite a few mechanics that you'd likely want to know for the fight. It can be accessed from the Falador Park by climbing down the large route in the center of the area. The instance is free, and it is here on this instance screen that you can select hard mode if you wish to choose that. Hard mode just hits slightly harder with both its auto attacks and its special attacks. It also will use its special attacks a bit more often, but it does have the same health, and the same general strategy applies for pretty much all the mechanics. You can pretty much use any style to fight this boss, and you should be fine with tier 70 gear or above for reasonable kill speeds without having to bank too much. And when you head down the route, you'll pretty much be placed into a fairly large cave. And for a quick breakdown of how the fight goes, you'll basically start off with the mole spawning in the middle cave area. Once you hit it down to about 70,000 health, it will dig under the ground and reappear in one of the 4 corner caves randomly, each of which has a different mechanic applied to it. You can see which it has gone to by the direction it digs and the dirt clouds that show up after it has dug, and each of these corner phases lasts for about 15k health, with the final middle phase being about 10 to 15k. That can kind of vary depending on when it decides to leave the last corner. But for the specific mechanics, in the northwest corner, the mole will occasionally summon 4 small moles with 100 health each, which will make the giant mole take an extremely reduced amount of damage until they're killed. So ideally, you will want to use something like Corruption Blast, Chain, or Dragon Breath to kill off these smaller moles and not miss out on too much damage on the mole itself. Just make sure you focus on them when they're alive, and then get back on the mole once they're dead, as you can then deal full damage once again. In the southwest corner, the mole will sometimes dive into the ground and emerge nearby to the player, causing rocks to appear on the ground that will deal damage over time if you don't move away. In normal mode, this is 200 HP every couple of seconds or so, and you will always be placed, or the rocks at least will always be placed such that you're standing on the corner of one of the box of damaging areas, so you can usually just take one step away and be off of the damaging area. And in hard mode, it'll do this attack twice in a row when it does it, but in normal mode it's only once. In the northeast corner, the mole will sometimes go into an enraged state, which will make it do a bit more damage, but it also becomes susceptible to stuns during this time, and if you do stun it, then it will kind of break out of the enraged state and also lower its defense as a result of that. So whenever it says that the mole has gone into its enraged state and can now be stunned, you just want to use something like Asphyxiate or Strong Backhand or Destroy if you're on melee. any stunning ability just to take advantage of the fact that it is now stunnable and to avoid it dealing extra damage to you. In the southeast corner, the mole will sometimes stun you and cause the ceiling to collapse, and if it lands on you, you'll take several hits of 200 to 300 damage, but you can use freedom to escape and move away before it lands on you once you see the notification that it is about to happen. However, this will not work in hard mode, and in hard mode, the mole will sort of trap you in a mud cocoon and use a powerful melee attack to break you out, which can hit over 2,000 damage. So you got to make sure you watch out for this attack if you are on hard mode. After it has gone to each corner for an entire phase, and again, this will happen in a random order every kill, the mole will finally head back to the central chamber for the final phase, where it can use any of the special attacks from the four corners, and it will typically tend to use two at once in hard mode, which means the mud trap attack can be quite threatening when it's combined with the enrage mechanic attack, where it will hit harder. So you do need to make sure you're at a little bit of a higher health than you might expect if you are on hard mode on this final phase. But yeah, you pretty much should be prepared to see any of the attacks from the four corners. The mole doesn't have a whole lot of health left at this point, so you'll typically be able to get it down before it can get off too many specials, as in normal mode it only uses one at a time. Just make sure if the tiny moles come up, you make sure to kill them off before continuing to kill the mole, or if it has the enrage mechanic activated, you go ahead and stun it, and then just avoid the other two as you would have done in the corners. And that pretty much covers the mechanics of the giant mole. It's a pretty easy fight. Just make sure you're using your movement abilities to get around the cave more quickly, as the fight can take quite a long time due to the fact that you have to move around so much, and can be quite an annoyance as a result of that. But once you get a pretty good feel for it, you can get anywhere from 1 to 2 minute kills. I'm not sure exactly how fast people tend to do it, but 2 minute kills should be pretty decent for you. And as far as drops go, the mole drop will always drop some mole skins and mole claws, which can be picked up in exchange for bird's nests, as well as if you've completed the Falador elite tasks, it will drop a mole nose, which can give you an additional bird's nest, and that is, I think, a better seed value one than the others. As far as rare drops, quote unquote, the mole can drop the clingy mole, which is a 5 out of 520 drop, the numbing roots, which are much more common, and it can also drop the dragon two-handed sword, which is 1 in 520. And the dragon two-handed sword and the clingy mole are the only two items on its collection log, alongside the pet. The pet, which is called the Rotten Fang, is a 1 in 2500 drop with a 500 threshold. However, in hard mode, the drop rate is increased to 1 in 500. So you definitely want to be doing hard mode if you're going pet hunting here, as it is a much better drop rate, and the fight is not all that much more difficult. Hard mode also has one unique drop to it, which is the Ultra Growth Potion 1 dose, and you can use this to I think advance a tree patch by 2 stages, I believe is its use. So yeah, and if you do manage to get the pet, Dragon 2H, and the Clingy Mole, you will be rewarded with the Of the Underground title for completing the mole collection. So yeah, those are the rewards available. Alright you guys, that pretty much covers everything you'd need to know to go ahead and take on the giant mole. Covered all of its various mechanics and how to handle them, as well as a couple of its rewards and stuff like that. And that is pretty much all I wanted to go over for these types of guides. Again, this is kind of a prototype of the style I want to go for, so if you guys could really leave me some feedback in the comments. Do you like this style? Do you have some changes you'd like to see for future guides? I would really love to hear your feedback in the comments. And the goal of these videos is to keep it a bit shorter than your average PvM guides. I know my Telos guides are extremely long, but they do have a lot of detail and specifics packed into them. This is kind of the opposite spectrum of that, which just gives you the bare minimum sort of knowledge you would need of the mechanics to go ahead and try the boss out, and then learn as you go from there. So I know there's kind of guides that appeal to different types of people, so please let me know your thoughts in the comments. This one was even a bit longer than a guide of this complexity of a boss would tend to be, just because I gave my whole intro spiel on the series that I'm hoping to create with these, as well as this little outro spiel of the same sort of tone. But please do leave me your feedback in the comments. I would greatly appreciate it. And yeah, I would probably like to make a guide like this, depending on the complexity of the boss that I'm going to be making it for, maybe once every 2 weeks or so. I don't want to settle into a strict schedule on it, because it can vary quite a bit depending on, you know, how busy I am and when I have time to record these. But I will be sticking to my current schedule, of course, of the Monday vlogs always, and the Hardcore Iron Man episodes on the weekend. But anyways, guys, I hope you all enjoyed this video. I mean, if you'd never done the giant mole before, maybe it helped you out, not sure. But thanks for watching, and I look forward to reading your feedback in the comments. Peace out, guys.